What's up, guys? Today we've got a lot to talk about. This video took me several weeks to put together. I had over 8 hours of footage. I had to move my entire city, rebuild from scratch, tear down some houses, rebuild them, test some things, and blah blah blah. It took a long time to put together, but we're here today. We're going to talk about efficiency and how you can build your village to be more efficient. So let's get into it. Let's start by defining what is efficiency. In the game, that's simply going to be how quickly you can make things. We're talking about armor, swords, etc. And the things that are going to kill your efficiency are how far you got to walk, how far away your supplies are, and the actual size of your city, because when people go idle, they wander around the entire outskirts of your town. So the tighter and smaller your village, the less they wander away. So if we look at my old city that you saw in my previous videos, you can see that it's quite big, and my new city on the surface would appear to be roughly about the same size. However, the city is actually broken down into 3 parts: a main city, a barracks, and the east side of the city. So 1 city and 2 outposts, making each piece smaller than the whole. So if we have a look at the old village, you can see it's actually cosmetically pretty nice. It's big and spread out, nice wide roads. But for example, let's look here at the blacksmith. If I need supplies, then I'm walking all the way over here across these farms to get to the warehouse. Alright, so now I get the supplies and now I gotta go all the way back to the warehouse. That's a lot of downtime killing efficiency. Now I need something at this other warehouse, so I'm gonna go to the other side of town, way over here, grab something, and I think you see the point. Walking kills your efficiency, how far you have to travel kills your efficiency, and having multiple warehouses kills your efficiency. Let's have a look at the new town. You can see I've still got a nice road here right down the middle, but the town is much smaller. So let's get the bell tower out so we can actually get a bird's eye view, and you can see that the village part that we're looking at here is much tighter and much smaller. It's essentially a square around the one single warehouse. So you can see how small and tight everything is here. So speaking of the warehouse has the access point faced directly into the middle of town, and it's a very short walk over here to the weaver when I need my cotton bolts and stuff. A little bit longer walk, but a direct shot right to the workshop, and you can see the armory right there, short walk. You can see the blacksmith right there, a direct line of sight, not very far. And even when you go over here to the second layer with the charcoal and the smelters, they have a direct line of sight and a straight shot right to the access point of the warehouse. When we go to the back here, inevitably something's going to be further away and behind. So I've got my third backup smelter over here that makes copper and stuff I need less of. I've got my backup weaver for when I get in a jam over here. I've got my farms and my leather and hide stuff over here, because all this stuff you just kind of set it and forget it and walk away, so it doesn't necessarily need to be as efficient as something like the armory, which you'll go back and forth to constantly. Speaking of farms, these farms are pretty much set up just to give me flax and hemp over here. We have cotton and more flax over here, so that'll supply all the things I need for the weavers. Now, since we mentioned outposts, let's have a look at the barracks. The barracks doesn't need to be as tight and efficient. You can set it up efficiently if you'd like, but primarily I've got 20 soldiers over here, and all they're doing is growing food for themselves. So you see we've got farms back here, we've got our mill, bakery, a couple inns, and a forager, and that's pretty much it. The inns will house 10 people each, so I've actually got all 20 of my soldiers housed in the 2 inns, which also double to make the food that they need. So you can see here I've got my 20 best warriors here. They're not all perfect, but they're the best I have, and they live inside the 2 inns, which we can see here if you zoom in on the map. Got 10 of them living over here, and the other 10 living right here. So if we look inside the inn, you can see we're making spices and vegetable soup. The vegetable soup isn't the best food you can make, but it's super cheap and easy to make, which is a good selling point for me. So we look at the farms, we're growing the vegetables that we need, the onions and whatever, sage, garlic, and all the things that we need to make our soup. And then we've got 2 farms over here making wheat. Of course, you got to turn the wheat into grains, so you're going to have your thrasher set up. I do 2 of them because you're going to need a lot of grains for the amount of bread you're making. And then, of course, over here at the windmill, you're turning that into flour. And then over here at the bakery, you can turn it into spice meat pie, which is fantastic, as well as bread. Now, the bread's the same as the vegetable soup. The stats aren't great, more stamina than health, which isn't the best for a warrior, but it's super cheap to make and I can make it in abundance, which is really good for my needs. Now we have these regular cauldrons over here that are all three making fine stew, which is again really cheap, and the stats are okay, 40 health, 45 stamina, but it gives you plus 20% combat ability, which is fantastic, especially for how cheap it is. It can use small meat, it can use regular meat, so depending on what meat you have in abundance, you can change it up a little bit to suit your needs. Now we need mushrooms to grow it, so over here inside of the forager, we're going to pick tons of mushrooms, and that's going to help our stew. Make sure you also go to the forager rack over here and turn it off, otherwise they're going to dry up all your mushrooms and you can't use them for cooking. Having a well right next to the cook pots is good because they all will need water for the stew. And if we look at the other one, we're making this spiced hearty meat stew, which uses 2 pieces of regular meat, which are the easiest ones to get. It's a little bit expensive, a lot of ingredients, but it's really not that bad. Plus it gives you 73 health, which is amazing, plus 30% combat ability, which is also really good. So why aren't we making this thing right here, spice meats roast? It's way better. Well, because it's super expensive, 3 raw meat, large raw meat per stew. Now, my goal is to make 20, 40, 60 of these on hand at all times so I can always have my army supplied, and I just don't want to have 7 of these and then now I've got 13 guys that don't get it. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm making the things that I know I can make in bulk, and the large meat is a little harder to get. We also have the fine meat stew that's going to take salt. So this one is even better, but salt you can only get a handful a day by trading. And again, I can't make the 20 or so per day on hand that I want. I can only make 4 or 5, and it's just not worth it to me for my army. So speaking of food, I ran a bunch of different tests, and here are the short version and my discoveries. There's basically 2 types of food, cooked food and uncooked food. Burnt meat actually counts as uncooked in my terminology. Dried berries, dried mushrooms will actually count as cooked food. Now, the villagers will prioritize cooked food, and they will not mix and match. So, for example, if you have a single cooked meat and you have all 5 different vegetables in your storage at once, they will eat the single cooked meat and ignore the vegetables, meaning they'll only eat 1 out of their 3 food slots. So when they go to work, once that 1 food is used up, they'll come back hungry looking for more. It can be a little bit annoying, but it also is super useful to know because then you can set up your warehouse and you can basically dictate what everyone will eat. Now, they won't mix and match, but they will eat the first 3 in order. So if you put all 5 vegetables there, they will eat the first 3 vegetables in order every single time, and they will ignore the next 2 until the first 3 vegetables are gone. So if we look at this example here, I'm able to dictate that they will eat bread and the fine stew first, followed by the vegetable soup, because those are the 3 easiest and most abundant things I'm going to have. They will not usually eat the meat stew or the spice meat pie because those are my best combat foods and I want to stockpile them and I don't want them to eat them. So by setting up my warehouse in this order, every single person in my barracks should be eating bread, fine stew, and vegetable stew in that order every single time they get hungry, and ignoring the next 2. Those are only for war. So I'm going to set up and I'm going to mobilize my army. So I'm going to hit call to arms. I'm going to mobilize all my reserves, and this is going to form my main bulk of my army. So after doing this, I'm going to set the food to 5, and then I'm going to put them on the rally point, and I'm just going to wait while they get their food. And if we check them out, each one grabbed 1 of each of those 5 different cooked foods. They didn't grab like 3 breads and 2 of something else. They grabbed 1 of each. Except this guy, for some reason, had a mushroom that threw him off, but most of them got exactly what I wanted. Speaking of army, in the test town, the main production town, I've got all these guys. Imagine you're scrolling down a list of like 60 people trying to figure out where's my army when you're trying to put them together. That's not very efficient. Well, we saw I have 20 warriors inside my barracks. I have 10 archers. The only people with the little green shield, my army reserve or whatever, these are all my main military army archers. So whenever I need them, all I gotta do is just scroll down and grab anybody with a green shield. Makes it pretty quick and easy to get. And I don't have to figure out, are these guys warriors? Are they archers? They're all archers. So I make sure they all have a bow, arrow, and quiver, and then I'm good to go for war. Alright, so the other part of my major town we'll call the east side of town. Test Town East, I think is what I labeled it as. And this place is going to be the hub that's going to grow all the food that I need for all my outposts. So getting our little bird's eye view over here, it's not as efficient, but it doesn't need to be. We've got a house over here. We've got the tanner's place, which I only pretty much use to make backpacks, and that's it. We've got our hunter's place over here, windmill just for decoration, warehouse, a bunch of farms, got a lumber mill, and a forager place that we don't currently use. So that's pretty much the setup, but this place is going to be a hub that's going to get food to all the outposts. It's also going to make all the tier 1 tools, so I don't have to waste time making them in my updated production area. So if we check out the other outposts, over here we've got the iron outpost with a single worker. Up here we've got a single worker making cranberries and river reeds. And zoom in over here. I like to keep everything nice and tight, so you can see my other outposts are really close, so I can march an army if needed. Over here we got a copper outpost, just one guy working there. Hardwood, wood, mud, and then hides and meat over here. And then over here we've got tin, wood, more hide and meat. And finally back to the east side, just to label it, we've got food, tools, arrows, and more hide and meat. So let's look at job priorities and go into an explanation on that. So everybody's going to come at default with a 5 and everything. But the first thing I do is I'm going to turn off hunting for anyone that's not a hunter, because I don't want random people grabbing my bows and arrows and then holding onto them or losing them, and then my hunters are out of tools. So this guy right here, he's got 6 out of 10 hunting, only 4 out of 5 archery. It'd be better if both of those were a 10, but not a bad hunter. So I'm going to put them as hunting only with a 1 priority in that, and everything else turned off except delivery. Delivery is going to be a 5 for everyone. And you can see the same thing here, another 6 out of 10, 4 out of 5. So I've got 2 hunters, full-time hunters. I'll do nothing else. The delivery part, everybody's going to have delivery turned on to a 5 because it does no good to chop down a tree and just leave it there. It needs to be delivered to the warehouse. So the people with a 1, they should hunt until they hit the quota, and then as a backup job, deliver and move stuff around. So that's how I have those guys set up. Alright, so wood chopping, I've got 2 guys set up as a 1, and I have them both as a 2 for harvesting, but there's currently no harvesting jobs to be had in this part of town. So they should get all the wood and logs that I need as a first priority, and then deliver them as a second priority. And research, I have my research here, but I'm not worried about that right now. Planting, I want to make food for everybody, so it's probably a little overkill to have 5 dedicated high-level farmers, but I have them as farming and nothing else, except, of course, delivering. And then I've got this other guy here who's a 1 in crafting, so we should make the quota of tools and arrows every day. And then when he's done with that, he'll be a backup to do anything. A 5 in everything else, meaning he could farm, chop wood, deliver, whatever. Same with the jack of all trades guy. Since he's a 5 in everything, he'll pretty much just be a backup when things are really pressed, like harvesting time or whatever. But he'll probably just spend most time delivering. Alright, so if we look at somewhere like Cranberry Reed Place, I just leave him as a 5. There's only 1 job and 1 person. The priorities don't matter whatsoever. They're going to do the 1 job. Copper, same thing. You could have them at a 1 for harvesting. You could have them at a 9. It doesn't really matter. There's only 1 job for them to do, and they're going to do it. Same thing with iron. There's only 1 job, 1 person. They're going to get iron, and that's it. When we look at the barracks, I've got way more manpower than I need. I don't need 20 soldiers to run this food camp. So it doesn't really matter what their job priority is. Now, if somebody's really good at something, like 6 out of 6 farming, I'll put them as a 1 in farming and leave everything else as a 5. Same thing up here, a 9 out of 10 farming, so I'll leave them as a farmer. This guy's a 6 out of 10 harvester, so I'll put him as a 1. So I'm playing to people's strengths, but I don't really care because I've got way more people than I'll ever need. Now, the harvester will only hold like 2 people at a time, so having your 2 best harvesters do it is good. I could turn everyone else off, probably. Maybe turn delivery off on the harvesters or the farmers since I have so many people, but I didn't find that it really mattered because there's just so many people and not that much work to do over here. Hardwood is a little bit different. So I've got 2 wood choppers, I've got 2 hunters, no need to explain as I already did earlier. The last guy, I've got him set up with a 1, 2, 3, and 5 as you can see here. Well, he's a 1 for harvesting, a 2 for farming, and a 3 for wood chopping. So the 3 for wood chopping is just a backup wood chopper, the 5 for delivery is delivery. But these other 2 have to do with the mud and the replanting forester, whatever it's called. So, as we'll see, this station is dictated by farming, and I ran the test on it. even though it says crafting right here, farming, if you turn off, no one will do it. And if one person's set to farm, they'll do it. And the other for harvesting is for getting the mud. And again, I tested it to verify, make sure. So this got set up to get the mud first, replant the tree second, get wood third, and delivery last. All right, so if we look at the main town, this is the one that's a little bit more complicated. I've got a bunch of crafting, which is pretty much all I do here, but I've also got a little farming to get raw materials. I need people to deliver stuff. I've got smelting to do. So I put a lot more into this one. So if you look at somebody like this, they're in the army, so at some point they're going to leave. I don't want them to be dedicated to a job and then leave to go fight. So I've got them pretty much mostly set up either as a backup, like a 2 here, or as a 5 in delivery. So pretty much all they'll do is deliver and maybe farm a little bit. But my main crafters, the ones who are like a 10 out of 10 or have the ability to be 10 out of 10, those are the ones that I want to have set up as a 1 in crafting and 0 in anything else. I don't want them to ever waste time delivering, farming, or anything else. I'd rather them just stand there doing nothing than do anything and be caught up doing something when it's time to craft my all-important armor and weapons, which is the whole point of this setup. It's also important to make sure you have a few dedicated smelters, because you can't craft anything if you don't have your iron or steel. And this, of course, is based off the crafting ability, so you want it to be somebody who's like, say, a 6 out of 6 crafting, because they'll never be quite good enough to make your armor, but still pretty quick when it comes to making the metal bars. And one thing to think about is, if the whole army leaves, are you going to be, short? Is your economy going to falter? Well, I've got lots of crafters, so I need to make sure that I've got people that aren't green, like this one, that are going to either farm or deliver, otherwise I'm just going to have a bunch of people standing around waiting for stuff that's not coming. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up right there because this video is getting really long, and we'll pick it up in part 2.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.